Hey everybody, today's a video on my new series where we do overviews of the XR series mixers. We're going to look specifically at the XR Edit software and talk about everything in specific tabs so that you know what you're looking at any given time. And we're going to start doing that right now. Let's go! So today we're going to look at just the mixer tab. We're going to talk about every single thing we see on here. And in addition to the mixer tab, because this is the first video in this series, we are also going to cover everything here on the setup side over at the right side. So you're going to get just a quick overview of everything you're seeing and why you're seeing it, what it's for, what it represents. We're not going to do a deep dive into the function of each item. There are other videos on this channel already about most of those things. So this really is just so you understand what you're looking at when you're looking at the mixer tab. So let's dive right in. Let's look here at the very top. We're going to start from the top of a channel strip and work our way down, and then we'll come across to the other side. So right up here, the first thing we see, you see some numbers in here, and this is the digit representation of the gain on your channel. So if I actually drag this, this is the gain. You'll see this number go up, and then you'll see it go down. So there's two representations of your channel gain here. You have a slider that indicates visually sort of where it is, and then you have a numerical value as well. I just showed you can drag this slider, but you can also just type in a value and it will jump to that value, and you will see the slider jump to that same representation. So underneath that, we have your phase flip. We have your 48 volts for phantom power, and we have channel link. So when I click on these, it's going to jump us to another tab, and that's okay. It just so you can see where those items are to configure, and then we'll just jump back. So I'm going to click on the phase invert. So that's also called your polarity, and that's right here. We're in the input tab. So we've got phantom power. I'm going to turn it on. We've got polarity. I'm going to flip it, and stereo link. So when I jump back, you can see that all three of these things are now illuminated. If you weren't already aware, stereo link literally gangs two channels together. So if I had a stereo device plugged in, let's say a keyboard with a left and a right, and I wanted to see both of those channels represented, I could plug left into one, right into two, link the two channels, and now they move in tandem. The gain will move in tandem. You can see there the gain moves in tandem. Your panning is automatically hard panned left and hard panned right. You'll see that that's the panning in a second. So that's what your stereo link is. I'm actually going to turn that off again, but you can see this is where it's represented. So directly underneath here, you can see there are 6 little channels that are similar to this. And those are the representation of the amount of signal being sent to each bus. I can actually grab these and move them, but I'm going to show you something else. If I come over here and choose my bus 1, and then I raise the signal here, because you can see we're outlined in yellow, which means we're doing sends on fader. If I bring this up, you're going to see the signal appear here. So I can do that by dragging this as well. If I jump back out to my main view, I can drag all 6 of these up. And then if we go back and look at the individual ones, you'll see there's a different amount of level being sent to each bus, and that is a representation of what we've done here. Right underneath that, these 4 channels, very similar to the buses, but they are for your effects. So again, if I choose effect 1 and bring up level, you're going to see it appear up here. And then I can also drag 2 and 3 and 4. And when we come back and look at these, you can see signal has been assigned to those effect sends. Directly underneath that, we have the gate, which is going to jump us to the gate tab. And if we turn it on, you can come back and you can see it is now activated, and there's a visual representation of your signal. Let's go back here and let's actually change the threshold, because I want you to see this. You get a visual representation of this on the main screen here. So directly under that is our EQ, which will jump us obviously to the EQ tab. And let's make a quick correction here just to see something visual. And you can also see the changes you made for your EQ right here in this little box. Right below that is your compressor, which will obviously jump us to the compressor tab. Again, we'll turn it on, we'll adjust the threshold so that we see something in this window, and that is now represented here. I already mentioned that this is your panner. So right now this channel is panned hard left. I can grab it here and drag it either way, or I can double click and have it come to center. Same over here. That one was hard panned from when we stereo linked. Double click, gone to center. Underneath that is actually the channel label, which I can right click on, and then I can change the name if I want to. Let's call it Mic 1. And then we can also change the color. Awesome. You can also come in here and drop from this menu. You can pick some stuff that's already assigned just for simple, quick labels. So let's say it's a kick drum. We can do that. And that's now represented here. Obviously, this is your solo button. If I click that, we would now be listening through our headphones or through our monitors to whatever is happening on this channel. If I disengage solo, in theory, depending on how your system's set up, you would then be listening to your whole mix through your headphones or through your monitor setup. But if I click on the solo button, that now allows me to listen to only this channel. You can solo as many channels as you want to listen to all at the same time, or just have one, or have none, or depending again on how you're set up, you can listen to the full mix when nothing else is selected. Directly below that, this numerical value is the value representation of your main fader for that channel. So again, you'll see it increase and decrease, or I can come in here and type a value and the fader will jump to that spot. Directly under that, we have our AUTOMIX and our DCA group notifications. So if I come over to the channel tab for this channel, if I turn on DCA group, you can see that it's now represented here on the fader. And if I assign it to a different DCA group, same thing, you see it represented there. And then for the mute groups, for AUTOMIX, not mute groups. Mute group is down here, but this is actually AUTOMIX. If you have this engaged for AUTOMIX, either X or Y, you'll see it represented there on your fader. Of course, now you have your fader, and directly below that, you have your mute groups. So if I click on this, I have now assigned this channel to mute group 1. If I come over here to the right and I click on mute group 1, it will mute anything assigned to that mute group. Right now, that's only channel 1. Let's turn that off. I'm going to assign a couple of other things to mute group 1, turn it on, and now everything I selected for mute group 1 gets muted when I click on mute group 1. I could also set some stuff to mute group 2, and if I do 2, you can see that these first ones do not get muted because they're part of mute group 1. Anything part of mute group 2 is now muted. And directly under the mute group is just the individual mute button for the channel. And that's it. That's a full channel strip from top to bottom. It is identical for every channel as you move over here. Obviously, when you get into your aux and your effects, there are some things missing because those are things that don't exist for the channel. For example, you don't have a gate here and you don't have a compressor here. You do have an EQ and you do have a panner, but again, no gate and no EQ. So now let's talk about this aux channel. This is an aux in, it's not an aux out. And on the XR18, which is what I'm looking at right here, this represents channels 17 and 18, which are the 1/4 inch inputs on the front of your mixer. So if you have something plugged into those 1/4 inches, this is the channel strip that it will show up on by default. You can change any channel strip assignment you want in here. If you go into the input, you can change that here. If I choose this, again, I can choose here to change it. Or if I'm connected to my computer via USB, I can also assign a USB channel to these strips. After the aux channels, we have our effects returns. So if I come over here and choose an effect and I send signal to it, it goes off to my effect on that slot, it gets adjusted, and then it has to come back. When it comes back to effects 1. So if I raise effects 1, anything that's going to the first effect will now come back to the console and I can mix it here with my original signal. If you need to know more about effects, I do have a video on that and it will be down below in the description. So the same thing is true for all 4 effect returns here. You send a signal to an effect unit, you manipulate it, and then it comes back to its corresponding effect return. Effects 1 to effects 1, effects 2 to 2, 3 to 3. You get the idea. Please be careful. I mentioned this in my effects video. If you have effects 1 selected instead of your main left right, and you bring this up, you're now sending the effect back into itself. Feedback loop. Please don't do that. And now that we've completed a look at all these channel strips, we can move over to this right panel control section. So we'll start up here at the left. Setup. This is where you can change what you're connected to. You can change your network settings. You can change audio MIDI settings, your monitor settings, and some other graphical user interface preferences. You can also synchronize here. So I could choose mixer to PC, which will take any settings in the mixer and send it into the software here on this computer. Or I can take any of the settings in the computer and send it to the mixer. When I choose what I want, I hit synchronize, boom, away we go. The other thing I have is initialize, where I can put all the settings back to default. This does not overwrite any shows you have, any snapshots you have. It is just a quick way to take any sends or any settings out of anything in the mixer and put it back to what we call 0. We've zeroed out the console. Let's close this window. The next thing we have is our in and out. This is all of our routing for the mixer. This is our input routing. This is the USB returns. So anything coming back from your computer to the mixer, this is where you would route it. USB sends is anything going from the mixer to your computer. This is where you would do that. Ultranet is if you have any device connected to the Ultranet port. If you're looking at an XR12 or a 16, you will not have this. You will also not have USB sends and returns because you don't have that option in those smaller models of the mixer. You also have your aux out assignment. By default, this is what it looks like, but you can move these around so that the aux one takes its signal from somewhere else. And then you have your main out routing, which is by default like this, but you could have the main outputs take their feed from somewhere else by choosing it here. And your phones, which are set up as your monitor to take this signal from your monitor system, you could also change that if you wanted to only listen to something specific at all times. Here you have your patching presets. So if I have changed patching here somewhere in the IO section and I want to save that, I can click here and save it. It will save it to your computer. This does not save the settings to the mixer. This saves it to the computer you are working on. Same thing if I've saved one and I want to recall it, I'll click here. I'll choose the parameters that I want to pull in from my previous saved file. I'll click load and it will load it from the computer. Again, this is only for pulling information from the computer in a file that you have saved to that computer. It's not pulling settings from the mixer because this is not looking for something that is saved to the mixer. Close that window. Close that. The next thing we have is our utility window. This opens up a bunch of smaller windows to allow you to have additional views that you can pin somewhere on your screen so that you don't have to jump into different places at all times to make modifications if you don't want to. First thing we have is our meters, which gives us a readout of these 2 meter sections. So the next window we have is our RTA, which is our real-time analyzer. I'm actually going to turn something on here. I'm going to turn on phantom power for this first channel because I have a condenser there so that you can see signal going here. Normally, this is set to main left and right by default. So if I bring this fader up and jump back to this window, you can now see this is a real-time analyzing of what's coming through the main left-right bus. You can also change the source that this is looking at by using this drop-down menu here. So we're actually sending signal on channel 1, so I could go to channel 1 and just look at what's happening here. You can also change this to spectrograph if you want, if you prefer this view to help you find inconsistencies. And then you have a whole bunch of other settings here, which we're not going to get into. This is just for you to understand what you're looking at, and you can go in here and modify these settings until it works the way that you want it to. Let's put this back to main left right, close that window. And then the next thing we have are our buses. So this is just another window that you can pin. If you want to pin something, you use this little pin icon. That way it won't disappear if I choose a different window, or if I come to this main window here and start moving it around, this will stay pinned. So what all this is another window where you can see all your buses, which are right here. So if I select bus 1 and move this fader, you're going to see this one move here, or conversely, if I move this one, you'll see that one move. So let's do that. Bus 1, you can see it move both ways, and the same is true for the other buses. So let's close that one. I'm going to unpin that. Also, obviously, you have your left right there. The next window we have are our DCAs. If you assign something to a DCA, which is just a control group, this is your main faders for your DCAs. Let's pin that again. Actually, let's move that there. So normally for DCA groups, I would have to click on one of my DCA groups here to see my DCA master fader. But if I have this window open, I can see them here. So right now I have 3 selected. So if I move this, you're going to see 3 move in the other window. There you go. Let's unpin that and close it. So the next window we have is user. So user 1 is a window that allows you to pin specific faders that you want to be able to see in a separate window at all times. Maybe you're working in other things in the main window and you just want something like maybe a couple of channels in the master fader visible at all times. So you can click select, you can choose a couple of channels. Let's do that. And then you can choose the main left right. And there you go. You now have a window that you can pin somewhere on your monitor, and it's always got the channels that you need to see no matter what you're doing. The other thing you can do is you can actually insert a blank. So let's remove some of this. Say I have my channel 1, then I want a blank space, then channel 2, then a blank space. Just to have some separation between things to make it a little bit easier to see, you can do that. So that's your user 1 window. If we go to utility, user 2, oops, that is exactly the same as user 1. So this allows you to have 2 custom built windows with the view that you want. Okay, so the next window we have is a DCA spill. Let's open that up. So DCA spill is a window that shows you any channel you have assigned to a DCA. So remember I showed you here, if we select channel 1 and go to the channel tab, I can assign it to a DCA group. So let's go with 1. If I now go back to that DCA window, the DCA spill window, you can see I have the master DCA, and then I have the channels that are assigned to it. I can also assign channels here by choosing select and then adding additional channels. And you'll notice that the 2 channels I added now have the DCA spill 1 showing on their channel strip. So DCA, if you weren't aware, it's a way to group channels together and then control their volume from a single fader. Now, if I pull this DCA master fader down, these faders don't adjust, but I have attenuated the volume of those channels all at the same time. Even if they're separate settings, if I do this, all of them have come down and now all of them will go up. That's what a DCA is. You can also shrink this window if you want. If you don't want to see all of this at the top, if you just want to see what's attached to your DCA, you can do that. Now, if I want to change the DCA spill that I'm looking at, because right now I'm looking at DCA 1, then I have to choose the DCA groups here. That's also true if you do it before you open the DCA spill window. So if I choose 4 right now and then open the DCA spill window, it opens up on DCA 4, then I can assign as required. You'll see these channels now have DCA 4 assigned. So that's your DCA spill window. And that's it for your utility windows. The next thing we have is our resize. Pretty self-explanatory, but we'll look at it anyway. Standard is pretty small. If I do medium, that's sort of what we were looking at a second ago. I enlarged it just a bit. Then you have high, and then of course you have ultra. And these are very dependent on the kind of window real estate that you have. The other thing you can do is you can size the window based on either your height or your width. So if I set my window like this and I choose window width, it will use the width I've set and assign or line everything else in a vertical spacing to make it fit. So let's do window width. There you go. And if I assign a different height and then choose resize height, it will assign everything horizontally to fit this height. So let's do that. There you go. And the next buttons we have here are your save, load, copy, paste. So save allows you to save scenes or channel presets. I have a video about this that you should check out if you want to know how to correctly save stuff on this console. So saving a scene will save on the computer, not on the mixer. It will save on your computer an overall snapshot of what you have happening in the whole mixer. So if I had a whole bunch of stuff going on and I really liked what I had and I wanted to save that for another show at another time, I'd click save, save as a scene, and then I'd be able to save it somewhere on my computer so that I could recall it later on any XR mixer I'm attached to. Now, save channel preset. If I have a bunch of stuff that I really like on one channel that I want to save, I can save a channel preset. Same thing, it will save it to the computer you're working on so that you can recall it on any mixer you're attached to in the future. And loads scenes or channel presets that you've just saved. And just so you can see a channel preset, I believe I have one here. Yep, there's a channel preset. So there, it pulled in some channel presets that I had. And a channel preset can be assigned on any channel. I can load that to any channel I have selected. So let's do that. There you go. You can see it's the same thing that I have over here with some minor differences. It doesn't capture the gain, it doesn't capture the phantom power, and it doesn't capture the DCA assignments. It's just a way to put in quick things like bus assignments or EQ or gate or compressor. The next thing we have is copy. So copy will copy all the parameters of a channel that you have selected, and then you can paste it to another channel. And when you choose paste, it will give you the option of what parameters you would like to copy and paste. So let's do all of them. And if I hit paste, you can see that this is now identical to this. It's essentially the same thing as doing a channel preset or load, only this is instantaneous. It doesn't have to be something that you've already saved. If you have worked on a channel in the last 5 minutes and you really like what you did and you need to assign it to another channel that's virtually identical, copy and paste. The next thing, this reset mixer window here. This is not anything about reset mixer. This is showing the snapshot that we're currently in. So if I click this button, snapshot, this is where you can save. It's like saving a scene, but this time it saves it to the mixer. So when you save a scene, that's saved to your computer, and you need to have that computer to load it onto any mixer you're attached to. If you do a snapshot save, you are saving it to the mixer, and then it can be loaded on any computer or tablet. It also, in the snapshots, gives you some additional items here that you can choose to save or not save, or choose to recall or not recall. And so in this window, you choose an empty spot if you need to. And if you like what you have going on, you click, give it a name. Let's call this test, and we'll save it here in 12. Boom. And it has saved my whole show now here as a snapshot, and I can recall it at any time I want, no matter what computer or tablet I'm using on the mixer. So understanding that this is telling us what snapshot we are in without having to go in here to look, these buttons right here, previous snapshot and next snapshot. Now, it doesn't go to this as soon as I click it over. That's what the go button is for. So if I'm working in test and I know that I have another band or something coming up shortly and I want to load their file as soon as I'm ready, I just scroll over to the file, and when I'm ready, I hit go, and boom, everything loads. Pretty awesome. Same thing, go over to my other snapshot, and when I'm ready, click go, and it loads that snapshot. So I'm going to jump in here really quick with something different. So you'll see that we now have something in this section that we didn't have before. So if you have an XR12 or an XR16, you have a USB port on the front that allows you to connect a USB stick. You can record to that stick, or you can play back files from that stick. And because of that, you have this little section here. So if I click on the recorder button, this opens up this window. And if I have a USB stick in there with some files, I can use these controls, or I can use these controls to move forward and back. So let's move backwards through tracks. Let's move forward through tracks, and I can also play a track. So you can see when I play a track, the signal comes up here on the aux channel. So while this aux channel was for the 17 and 18 on the XR18, it is actually the channel where you control the playback from your USB stick. So you have the ability to stop, play, previous track, next track, and you can also record right from this window here. All of these same controls are listed right here. They do the exact same thing. And here you have the choice of your source that you want to record from. By default, it's set to main left and right. So anything going out of your main mix will get recorded into your USB stick. You can change this to any other source available in your mixer, and you can change where the tap point is taken from. Analog, pre-fader, pre-EQ, post-fader, post-EQ. And if you're not sure what any of those mean, I do have videos that talk about pre-fader, post-fader, all that stuff. Not in this scenario, but the premise still stands. So you can watch those videos to understand what that means. Anyway, that is the window I wanted to show real quick before we jump back to the XR18 for the rest of the overview. And that brings us down here to AUTOMIX. So AUTOMIX is a way to have a bunch of microphones live. Let's say you have a bunch of panelists sitting answering questions with a host or something, and you don't want to have to actively mix channels on and off. You can set these things to AUTOMIX. You can have 2 channels of AUTOMIX. So let's just say I have microphones 3, 4, and 5, and I want to set them to AUTOMIX. I'll set them on the same one for now. There's AUTOMIX. And what that does is it monitors, when I turn this on, it monitors the volumes that are coming through each channel. And the microphone that's being more active is the one that will take priority. So if you have a 3-person panelist and 1 person is speaking at any given moment, the other channels will be pushed down so that the person speaking, they're not really being interrupted. That's the basic idea of an AUTOMIX. You can also have a second channel of AUTOMIX, so you could have 3 people over here and 3 people over here. These ones assigned to X, these ones assigned to Y, and the same thing will be true on how it functions, only they will function independently. So one person could be talking quite a bit on X and one person could be talking quite a bit on Y, and the other 2 mics here and the other 2 mics here will be pushed down by the person who's talking the most. So, and that brings us to last gate here. This is a little button you can select. If you have one person who's speaking maybe for an extended period of time in your group and you have the channel gate turned on, but you don't want to hear that gate opening and closing when they take, maybe brief pauses in their speech, you can turn on last gate, and that will actually stop the gate from opening and closing as they are pausing in their speech. It can just be a little bit nicer if maybe you have some background noise that isn't being properly filtered out. You don't want to hear that coming in and going out when the person is pausing in their speech. DCA groups, I've already mentioned what the DCA groups are, but this is where you select the one you want to control with your master. Below that is a clear solo button. So if I have something selected to listen to on my monitor bus, and then I want to quickly clear those, I can just click that one button and it turns the solo off on everything. Then we get to our main left right button. This is the button that you have selected by default, and this means that we are adjusting anything we want to hear through our main left right. Anytime you select something right here, it will assign a master fader. So right now, this is our main left-right master fader. So with that up, any adjustments we make here will be going out to our main left-right speaker, our front of house speakers, however you want to reference them. Same thing with buses. When I choose a bus here, anything we now change here will go out to our bus 1. If I go to bus 2, this is now going out to bus 2. And of course, there is a master fader that comes up anytime you select a bus. Same thing for our effects. These are the effect sends. This is now allowing us to send signal to the effects, and it has assigned us an effect master fader for the slot we're looking at. You also have a little visual representation here on the right-hand side of the effect that you are modifying. You can click on these little windows to bring up the effect that you're looking at. There, really quickly, there it is, and you can do save of your settings in here. You can load previous settings that you'd already saved. Same thing, those are saved on the computer and recalled from the computer. not from the mixer. If you need to change what effect you're looking at, then you would actually come into the effect tab here and you can change what's in these slots. Below our effects, we have our mute group buttons. So as we know, if you assign something to a mute group, let's say mute group 1, and then you select mute group 1, it mutes everything in that mute group. This is where you control those mute groups. And that brings us over to our master fader strip here. You have an EQ, you have a compressor, you have panning. You can also name this channel or use something that's already pre-made. You have a solo button just to listen to this. And then you have your visual representation of your fader, your numerical representation of your fader, which you can also type in an adjustment. Then of course your master fader, and then your mute button. So there you go. That's the overview of the mixer tab and of the control section on the right side. So now you know everything you're looking at and why it's laid out like this for you to see it. Keep an eye out for the other videos coming in this series which cover all the other tabs. As soon as they're ready, they will be linked down below in the description. In the meantime, I hope this was interesting, entertaining, educational, and if it was, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. You can check us out on Patreon. You can join the channel down below, or you can do a super thanks down below. Big thanks to everybody who's already done all of those things. And until we see you next time, thanks for watching here on Quickies. Bye, everybody.